Today on Historical Moments we're tackling a question that's both straightforward and incredibly complex. Why did the Germans, in the period before Hitler became dictator, vote for Hitler and the Nazi Party? This is about understanding a historical moment, not excusing it. So let's set the scene. It's the early 1930s in Germany and the country is in crisis mode. The economy was an absolute disaster. The Great Depression hit Germany harder than almost anywhere else. By 1932, about 6 million Germans were unemployed. That's roughly 1 in 3 workers. Middle-class savings were wiped out. People who'd done everything right suddenly found themselves destitute. And this wasn't Germany's first economic rodeo. Just a decade earlier, they'd experienced hyperinflation so severe that people needed wheelbarrows full of cash to buy bread. Life savings became worthless overnight, so there was this deep anxiety about economic stability baked into the culture. The Weimar Republic, Germany's democratic government at the time, seemed completely unable to fix any of this. The government was paralysed by infighting, constantly changing chancellors, and struggling to form stable coalitions. When people are desperate, they start looking for alternatives, any alternatives. Now add to this economic nightmare a profound sense of national humiliation. The Treaty of Versailles, which ended World War I, was deeply resented by most Germans. Germany had to accept sole responsibility for the war, pay massive reparations, give up territory, and reduce its military to almost nothing. Whether or not these terms were fair is a different conversation, but what matters is how Germans felt about it. Many believe they'd been stabbed in the back, that Germany hadn't really lost the war militarily, but had been betrayed by politicians who signed the armistice. This stab in the back myth was powerful and widespread. Hitler and the Nazis hammered this message constantly. Germany had been humiliated, betrayed, and weakened by its enemies and by weak politicians. They promised to restore German pride and make the country strong again. For people who felt their nation had fallen from greatness, this message resonated deeply. Another crucial piece was the fear of communism. The Russian Revolution was still fresh in people's minds, and there had been communist uprisings in Germany itself right after World War I. The Communist Party was gaining strength during the Weimar years, and this terrified a lot of Germans, especially the middle class, business owners and landowners. The Nazis positioned themselves as the ultimate anti-communist force. They literally fought communists in the streets. For many conservatives and moderates, voting Nazi wasn't about embracing fascism, it was about preventing what they saw as the greater evil of Bolshevism. Some wealthy industrialists even funded the Nazis for exactly this reason. Let's talk about the violence. The streets of German cities in the early 1930s were genuinely dangerous. Different political parties had their own paramilitary groups. The Nazis had the SA, the Brown Shirts, the Communists, had their Red Front fighters. These groups clashed constantly, turning politics into literal street warfare. In this chaotic environment, Hitler and the Nazis presented themselves as the party of order and strength. They promised to restore law and order, and to end political chaos. The irony, of course, is that the Nazis themselves were major contributors to that violence, but they were very effective at portraying themselves as the solution rather than part of the problem. Now let's talk about Hitler himself. Whatever else you can say about him, he was an incredibly effective speaker. He had this ability to tap into people's fears and resentments, to make them feel understood, and to offer them scapegoats for their problems. The Nazi propaganda machine, led by Joseph Goebbels, was also frighteningly sophisticated for its time. The Nazis didn't just have one message, they tailored their pitch to different audiences. To workers, they emphasised the socialist part of National Socialism, and promised jobs. To business owners, they emphasised order and anti-communism. To rural voters, they talked about traditional values and protecting farmers. To nationalists, they promised to restore Germany's greatness. And yes, anti-Semitism was always central to Nazi ideology, but it's worth noting that many Germans who voted Nazi probably didn't vote primarily because of the anti-Semitism. Some ignored it, some agreed with it to varying degrees, and some didn't take it seriously. This doesn't excuse it, but it helps us understand how a democratic society can slide towards authoritarianism. Let's look at the actual numbers for a second. In 1928, the Nazis got just 2.6% of the vote. By July 1932, they'd jumped to 37.3%, the largest party in the Reichstag, though still not a majority. In the November 1932 election, they'd actually dropped to a 33.1%. It wasn't until Hitler was appointed Chancellor in January 1933, not through an election win but through political manoeuvring, that he could begin dismantling democracy. So it's important to understand the majority of Germans never voted for Hitler in a free election, but enough did and enough others were willing to accept him that he could take power. So why did Germans vote for Hitler? There's no single answer. It was a perfect storm of economic desperation, national humiliation, political instability, fear of communism, effective propaganda, and a democratic system that had lost the confidence of its people. The lesson here isn't that Germans were uniquely evil or uniquely susceptible to authoritarianism. It's that democracies are fragile, especially when people are desperate and afraid. When democratic institutions seem ineffective, when the economy collapses, when political violence becomes normalised, that's when demagogues promising simple solutions to complex problems can gain traction. Understanding this history doesn't mean excusing it, but it does help us recognise the warning signs, the vulnerabilities in any democratic system, including our own. Thanks for listening, everybody. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and we'll see you next time.